it's pretty incredible the fact that 20 years later, people are still talking about that record, and the fact that we can still play, almost any song off that record and people know it, which is nuts.
So so take us back, like a week before, it's like 20 years from right now, a week before it released, you would have already obviously had it recorded, had the visuals done, probably a physical copy. Do you remember like the hype? Like, was it an internal buzz of like, this thing slaps, or like this thing is going to move units, or was there any thought about that?
No, we had a lot of people saying those things to us, but I didn't believe any of it, coming from the hardcore scene where there's no such thing as rock stars, there's no signing autograph. At least back then, there was no signing autographs. People didn't give a shit. Like, we're in a band, we get off stage, we go to the merch table, we sell the t-shirts, and we watch the next band, and we're fans of that band. That's who we were. So when this album was made, sure, we knew we were getting on a label that had a roster of incredible bands that we all grew up listening to, whether it be, Life of Agony, Sepultura, Obituary, Machine Head. I mean, Roadrunner Records was the label, and we were getting signed to it. So we knew it was a big deal. But honestly, our kind of like talk was, well, hopefully they won't drop us and it'll sell just enough. Maybe we can continue touring. So our expectations were pretty low, which I think was good at the time. We didn't go in there thinking we're going to go become rock stars or whatever. We had no idea what was going to happen. None of us.
It's actually interesting too, because it was 2002. So you got to think, for us, you're coming out of the new metal scene circa 98 to call it 2001. So 2002 is almost ushering in this new crossover sound with a lot more complexity. And you guys were really spearheading a whole new movement in that sound dynamic. And I think Killswitch Engage was one of those bands that really ushered in, okay, this is the new phase of where metal's going. So
yeah, I think on the surface that's what it became. But we were standing on the shoulders of giants. I could list many bands in the New England area alone that were sort of getting into that style, like the blending of the melodic and the hardcore kids that started listening to like post-hardcore that incorporated metal riffs. I mean, I can remember seeing Slayer and Iron Maiden shirts coming into the hardcore scene, where even just 5 years prior to, you might get into a fight over that. Someone might like call you a Hessian and try to fight you at a hardcore show, or vice versa. Yeah. You're a short-haired kid going in with like an Earth Crisis shirt to a metal show. People are like, what is this dude here for? So there was a lot of like weird things going on. But when that started to mesh together, I think a lot of us from the New England area were looking over at Europe going, wow, these guys are onto something here. Soilwork, In Flames, At the Gates. And for me, the big one was Edge of Sanity, a band I don't think gets not even like way less credit than they deserve. Dan Swano was the producer of that, who actually helped get Opeth started. Opeth would be another band.
Nice.
Where you had these bands doing the melodic and the death metal growls already. So for us, it was mixing our hardcore roots, our like sort of like post-hardcore indie pre-emo roots, the Discord Records stuff like Fugazi, Jawbox, Sunny Day Real Estate, At the Drive-In, all those bands we were fans of those bands as well, mixed in with Metallica riffing, Meshuggah were a huge influence on those guys, Carcass. So just like all this influence is mashed up into our sound. But I honestly think part of it was we were at the right place at the right time to sort of get that boost of being sort of looked at as the forefathers of this new genre that we didn't even call ourselves metalcore. That wasn't even the term. We're like, what is this?
Right. Yeah.
And that was coined to sort of describe what was happening. But I can point back to, I mentioned Earth Crisis. I can mention Integrity was another band that was doing that blend of metal and hardcore before us. Mm-hmm. So, I humbly bow to all those people who paved the path. And I said Life of Agony, another one with melodic vocals, Only Living Witness. So there's a ton of people that I have to give credit to inspire us to do what we did.
Yeah, that Cleveland sound, that Syracuse sound. Yeah,
totally.
So it's 20 now, and I think the three of us all saw you on the 10-year anniversary tour too in Portland, Maine.
Yep.
And thanks for coming to Portland. We appreciate that.
Portland's great, man.
Is it something that like some people don't look back on the old stuff reverentially. Some are like, ah, man, that was me 20 years ago. It's not me today. How do you feel about it, looking back on it now 20 years later? Is it something that you're happy about, you love, you'll spin here and there, or is it something like, nah, I'm new now?
I don't listen to it. I tend not to listen to any of my stuff. I'd say, to be honest, the only thing I've been re-listening to is the New Times of Grace record, because to me it still holds a weird sentimental life to it. We've never toured on it. It's never been blasted into my ears over and over again to rehearse. So that record, Songs of Lost and Separation, I can still kind of put on and go, oh, this is nice. Wow, cool record. Where everything else, I've listened to it so much to rehearse for tour. I've played some of those songs so much that I don't ever just go casually put on Killswitch and go, check me out. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think that Alive or Just Breathing still holds importance. It still holds weight. It's still good songs. And that's the one thing I will stand by. Like, we started to write songs. Our first record, our self-titled, was stripped down metal with a hardcore influence with a touch of death metal. But it was more about just like riffs and like bludgeoning people with this sound that we were kind of wanting to put out there, where Alive or Just Breathing was more about songwriting. We consciously wanted to make songs. And I'm looking at bands like Faith No More, which is, all of us can agree in Killswitch that Faith No More was like one of those bands you would aspire to want to be, or even Pantera. They were heavy, but they had hooks. They had stuff you wanted to sing along to. So we were kind of looking at bands like that going, all right, we want to be heavy. We want to do our thing, but we want to write good songs. So that was a conscious effort. So I think those songs still, some of them still hold up.
I think they definitely do. I mean, from a fan's perspective, from self-titled to Alive or Just Breathing, I think the whole presentation's a level up. I think musically, obviously new label, Adam D coming into his own on the production side, vocally, it's a difference. And self-titled's phenomenal. It's more of just that Alive or Just Breathing, I think, is a true level up. And I think it's a blueprint that, for better or for worse, was copied and diluted so many times. And Jesse, you guys are to blame for that. No, you guys spearheaded that. I mean, you guys were the blueprint. And I would put Alive or Just Breathing in the Mount Rushmore of, we'll call it metalcore. And a lot of your company is ironically Massachusetts bands. I'd put Jane Doe in there. I'd put Art of Balance in there, and a few others. But like, do you feel that way, that, okay, I can kind of look at the landscape and I can hear a little of what we did? Do you feel that?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think even more so back in the mid 2000s, it was like mind boggling. The amount of bands that would do the gruff verse and then, the slightly yelling bridge and then the big melodic chorus. It got to the point where it was almost like a joke. Like, you just could sort of like, oh, here comes the singy part. Here comes the talky part where he's like, I'm convicted about what I'm saying. It's going to get crazy. But, they say that imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I think for me, especially having stepped away from the band and hearing it and seeing it and having no part of it, I felt sort of validated as an artist, even though technically I had sort of quote unquote failed in my mind, because I walked away. I quit. I couldn't handle it, which is a whole other bag of worms. But I felt validated because there were a lot of bands that were sounding like that, and then I watched Killswitch just reached a whole other level of like, whoa, with End of Heartache, that was like, talk about leveling up. I would argue that they were one of the biggest metal bands in the world for a small amount of time with Howard there. And again, I felt like I was still kind of a part of it, because I helped.